Most about protect yourself for a long time. Touch gun.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, it was announced a few days ago that Savannah Marshall is going to be back in action on April 4th on the undercard of Ritson versus Vasquez. This card is going down April 4th. Being said, the fight date is right around the corner, more or less. About a month away, a little over. And this fight for Savannah is not going to be at middleweight or super middleweight. Rather, it's going to be at light heavyweight. And she's going to be challenging what is the WBO's light heavyweight champion, Giovanna Perez. I want to say that the move itself does seem a bit strange for me because the light heavyweight division and its talent pool is even more shallow than what you get at 168. And there are talented fighters at 168. It's just that there's a very small number of them. That number becomes even smaller the higher you go. In this instance, 175. Giovanna Perez only has one more fight than Savannah Marshall has. You know, Giovanna has 9 professional bouts, 8 victories, 1 loss, 1 knockout. Whereas Savannah has 8 professional victories, 8 professional fights, 6 knockouts. Savannah's a big puncher, you understand. She's a big puncher that is a busy puncher, but also a big puncher. She can get the knockout, believe you me, she can get it. And the fact that she's ambidextrous, that she can fight out of both the orthodox and southpaw stances, only enhances her ability to get a knockout because she can give a fighter different looks from different angles and approach the situation different ways. So I look at this fight and I think to myself, what was the hierarchy of thought? And I can only deduce that the people at Matchroom, Savannah's handlers, they looked at it as an opportunity for Savannah to pick up a title that's relatively easy to win because, you know, God bless Giovanna Perez, reigning champion. But I don't think she's on the level of Savannah Marshall. I really don't. I don't think anybody in the women's light heavyweight division is on the level of Savannah. And it struck me as strange that Savannah's next fight was going to be there when there are no big names at 175. You know, Savannah's best bet to be involved in a meaningful fight is anywhere from 168 to 154. 154 if Savannah can make it. I'm not sure that she can or can't. I just know that there are some more recognizable characters in that division as opposed to where she's going to be fighting next, which is 175. I think that they viewed this as an opportunity for Savannah to pick up a world title, become a world champion, but I don't think they have long-term plans for Savannah to stay in that weight class. I really feel like this is going to be a one-off kind of situation. I think that if Savannah makes it past Giovanna Perez, and I think she will, I think that she'll go back down to super middleweight and maybe even move a little further down to middleweight, where her amateur rival, Clarissa Shields, is the undisputed champion. And even that's kind of topsy-turvy because Clarissa just won 2 world titles at junior middleweight. So what's going on with the title she's got at middleweight? At some point, she's going to have to make a choice. But just back to Savannah, I don't think Savannah's going to be staying at 175 moving forward after this. I think that in all likelihood, she could win this title. I give her good odds to do it. She is the more statuesque fighter in this fight. You'll notice the height differential between Savannah and Giovanna. You'll also notice the discrepancy in these fighters' ages. Savannah is in her prime. She's about, 27, 28 years old. To Giovanna, who's on the other side of 40. I mean, she's in great shape compared to me or you, but as far as fighters go, she's on the other side of 40. fighting what is a very statuesque, skillful, and strong puncher. I think that Savannah's going to get the knockout. I think that. But I don't read too much into this move. I really don't. I don't think that they're going to waste the talents of Savannah Marshall in a division that is very much a ghost town.
Yeah.
I think that if she wins this belt, she will move back down, and we'll see her competing against more notoriable names like the unified champion Aline Cedar-Ruz, perhaps a Franchon Cruz, perhaps even an Alejandra Jimenez to make a statement. Alejandra, who's got that situation, that pet fiasco still going on. But you know, for now, keep your eyes peeled on April 4th for the silent assassin, Savannah Marshall, who the next time you see her could be crowned as the WBO's light heavyweight champion, albeit for a short while. Moving on, I'm sure most of you have heard by now that Josh Warrington has parted ways with promoter Frank Warren after reaching the end of his contract, so he is now a free agent, Warren said. We all wish Josh every success for the future and will always remember the great nights we enjoyed in Leeds. As we all know, Josh Warrington has re-signed to Matchroom, because he did used to be a Matchroom fighter, but he crossed the street over to Frank Warren's side of things in 2016, and he's been there ever since. And for the most part, I think it was a fruitful relationship, because under the Queensberry Promotions banner, we saw Josh Warrington square off against Kiko Martinez, Lee Selby, Carl Frampton, Kid Galahad. These were important fights for Josh. This is why he has the resume that he has, which is one of the most respectable resumes in his weight class. He is an undefeated IBF champion. It's just that moving forward for Josh, I think that Frank took him about as far as he could take him. He took him about as far as he could go as a Queensberry Promotions fighter. Frank doesn't have the resources to make certain fights happen. That's the truth of it. We know that the Shakur Stevenson fight very recently was a talking point, but Shakur was unhappy with the money. And if you know anything about Frank, you'll know that he's actually notorious for sending out those kinds of undesirable offers. Well, under Matchroom, Fast Eddie, he can make it happen because he can incentivize the kind of offer that a Shakur Stevenson, for example, is looking for. Shakur, who would be a undefeated traveling champion looking to unify with Josh in Josh's neck of the woods. In that situation, yeah, you really do got to incentivize an offer for the other guy if you want to make it happen. Frank couldn't do that. And I don't know if it came from a lack of desire to see the fight get made, or if it was just that Frank didn't have the money. But one way or another, it was an issue, and we all saw it. Well, with Eddie, that really won't be a problem. Incentivizing an offer for a champion to come over to their side of things and have a fight, that won't be a problem for Eddie, because Matchroom's got the resources that Frank Warren's promotions
Queensberry
don't have, Queensberry. Matchroom here today is not what it was in 2016 when Josh decided to cross the street. A lot has happened since then. A lot has changed since 2016, and it just so happens that here today, some of the best and brightest fighters from around the world, male or female, are all fighting under the Matchroom banner. Some of the biggest fights, most important events, they're happening as a result of Matchroom promotion. So Josh very much made the right decision moving forward, because if he would have maintained that relationship with Frank, there would have been only so much on the table for him to do. I mean, it's a similar hierarchy of thought, as far as why Josh crossed the street to when Billy crossed the street. Billy also, a guy who left Frank for Eddie Hearn.
Yep.
So for Josh, it's good news. For Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Promotions, yep, it's good news. And for the boxing fans, it's good news, because with the resources that Matchroom has at their disposal, they can make a lot of things happen for Josh, and we get to see those things happen, those kinds of fights. But for Frank, well, this can't be welcome news, that Josh didn't re-sign with them. I mean, they don't have a lot of world champions over there, you understand. They got the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder rematch coming up, and that is a decent-sized fight. It's just that if Tyson Fury doesn't win that fight, well, that's not too good for Queensberry Promotions now, is it?
No.
They've also got the fight between Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce going down. That's a decent-sized fight, too. I really like that fight. And there really is no loser in terms of how it affects Queensberry, because they're both Queensberry Promotions fighters. It's just that, that's really all they've got going on. I mean, what else is there in terms of Queensberry staging meaningful fights that are going to captivate people's attention? Anthony Yard was in action very recently, and very few people knew about it because he was participating in some obscure promotion over there in Spain. He racked up a victory against some journeyman, bouncing back after the loss to Sergey Kovalev, the knockout loss. I'm sure that when Anthony returns, to the UK, he's going to be a big part of Queensberry Promotions' bottom line.
He better be.
That's assuming he still is a Queensberry Promotions fighter, though I'm going to assume that he is until further notice, until I hear otherwise. As it stands, in the world of British boxing and the British boxing community, Matchroom continues to be the biggest game in town, and the Queensberry Promotion stable continues to thin out. They lost Billy Joe Saunders. Now they've lost Josh Warrington. They've still got Tyson Fury, but the problem with that is Tyson Fury's doing all his fighting here stateside.
Yeah.
And I do think that has an effect on Queensberry's standing over there with the fight fans over there in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
One of the biggest names you got, one of the biggest homegrown fighters, homegrown talents that you've got, he's not actually doing any fighting at home, and his biggest fight to date is happening here in America. So, you know, you're losing ground with the fight fans over there in the UK. I shudder to think how Frank Warren can continue if this trend continues. I shudder to think of a world without a brick town.
Fucking French. If I throw a dog a bone, I don't want to know if it tastes good or not. You stop me again whilst I'm walking, and I'll cut your fucking Jacobs off.
And just in keeping with the theme of fighters crossing streets for new opportunities, we know that Gary Russell successfully defended his WBC featherweight title against Tuksak Nyambiar. And we know that ahead of the fight, Gary said that if he can't get that Leo Santa Cruz fight, that he's going to skip 130 and go all the way up to 135. But hypothetically speaking, if Gary were to do this, and I like Gary, I like the way he fights, I like the way he carries himself, I like the way he does business.
More or less.
It being that 135 is primarily comprised of other fighters that are not PBC fighters, one might feel so inclined to ask, okay, Gary, you can move up to 135, but to fight who? I hope it's not, to chase around Gervonta Davis. I want to say this, and you can feel free to disagree. And what I'm about to say is not shilling for an outfit so much as the betterment of boxing and what a boxing fan would want to see. Gary Russell is a good fighter, and I would like to see him campaigning at either 130 or 135, provided that he can get the big fights that he hasn't been getting. The Leo Santa Cruz fight in all likelihood is going to remain an elusive fight, because the very next fight for Leo could be Gervonta, in which case they leave Gary out in the cold. So for leaving Gary out in the cold, and for Gary standing in the cold, why doesn't he just go over the Top Rank or Matchroom or one of those outfits that can make things happen for him? I mean, why not? Josh Warrington just crossed over to Matchroom, right?
Right.
Well, Josh Warrington actually mentioned Gary Russell by name as a fight that he would like. Thing is, here today, that fight's not feasible because Gary's still on the PBC side of things. Hypothetically speaking, if Gary were to cross over to Matchroom, you could bet your bottom dollar they'd make that fight. And Gary would likely make a career-high purse as a result of it. Win or lose. Big fight for the fans, big purse for the fighters. Everybody wins.
More or less.
In a manner of speaking. But if he stays where he is, those kinds of possibilities really aren't possibilities. It's just going to be more of the same thing. Now, Gary's talking about going to 35. I think that wouldn't be the best weight class for him because he's not that big a guy at 126. So just imagine at 135. I think 130 might be a better weight for him. And if he were to move up to 130, well, in that situation, I would have to say the Top Rank has the best options for him. Top Rank could get him a fight with the winner of Frampton versus Herring or a fight with Miguel Burchelt. Those are certainly more important fights, more sizable events than what he's been doing so far. And I reiterate, this is not about shilling for different boxing outfits so much as a boxing fan wanting to see certain fights involving certain fighters and discussing what wheels need to be in motion for that to happen. If Gary stays where he is, nothing's going to change. And at some point, somewhere down the line, maybe they give him that Gervonta Davis fight, but this is likely after Gary slows down and he's not as formidable. They'll feed Gary to Gervonta to spruce up Gervonta's resume, with another little guy, because Gary's a smaller guy than Gervonta. I don't really want to see that happen. I've no real enthusiasm to see Gervonta Davis cherry-pick smaller fighters from smaller weight classes. I think what benefits Gary more is to see what else is out there for him and see if maybe crossing the street is right for him. It was right for Josh, and that's what Josh did, maybe Gary needs to take a cue from Josh.
Yeah.
I mean, ask yourself a question, and it's a simple question. Don't you think that Eddie Hearn would pay Gary Russell more money to fight Josh Warrington than Gary just made, risking it all against Tuksok Nyambar? I think so.
Yeah, he would.
They'd make it worth his while if he crossed over to that side of things, that side of the street. I mean, the real issue here is, it's not that Matchroom isn't willing to work with the PBC or that Top Rank isn't willing to work with the PBC. It's that the PBC isn't as willing to work with them. So if Gary stays there, who's going to make the earnest effort to bring those fights into fruition? Who at the PBC is making that kind of a fight a priority?
Nobody.
When a fight with Leo Santa Cruz remains an elusive fight for years and years and fucking years, who at the PBC is going to ensure that Gary is getting important fights with important fighters for significant purses? Because that doesn't really appear to be going on.
Nor has it been.
If he went to Top Rank, for example, well, he wouldn't be isolated at Top Rank. He wouldn't be limited to just fighting Top Rank fighters. He could fight Golden Boy fighters, Matchroom fighters, MTK fighters, and Queensberry Promotions fighters. And the same is true if he went to Matchroom. He'd have access to Top Rank fighters, MTK fighters, and Queensberry Promotions fighters, because Matchroom and all those other outfits, they are willing to work with each other. But if he stays on the PBC side of things, okay, what are his options? Wait for Gervonta Davis to pick up the phone? Wait for Leo Santa Cruz to pick up the phone? Or continue to fight once a year for the next 4 more years? I don't even know. I mean, Gary's 31. How many more years does he have left? I don't want to see a good fighter wasted sitting on the shelf on the PBC side of things. And it's for this reason that I feel like, you know what, Gary needs to take a cue from Josh Warrington and explore his other options, because if he continues down this path, in all likelihood, all the people at the PBC are going to do for him feed him to Gervonta Davis, and not right away. Not right away, because, you know, the talk seems to be right now that Gervonta's next fight is going to be against Leo. Perhaps after that, 2 or 3 fights, what could be a year, maybe Gary gets the shot that he's been looking for. But in what condition will he be in during that amount of time when he's already, 31 years old right now? I mean, Gary needs to do something. That's all I'm saying. He needs to do something because he's a good fighter, and it seems like the PBC is happy to let him go to waste. And you know what? If he's going to stay on that side of the street, then he's allowing himself to go to waste. And then it'll just be a self-inflicted wound.